The town of Plainville. Established in 1721 at the geographical center of Connecticut.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our town council meeting. Tonight is Monday, March 7th, 2022, 7 p.m. Welcome to our meeting. If you please stand for the pledge, I will ask Vice Chair Underwood to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin the regular portion of our meeting tonight, I have a few remembrances that I'd like to do at the top of the meeting. First, I would like to remember Edgar Wynkoop. Edgar Wynkoop passed today. Edgar served 2 consecutive terms on the Plainville Town Council from 1979 to 1983. He also served in our fire service for over 40 years as a firefighter and fire police. Edgar had, spent his whole life here. I know there's many folks in town that knew Edgar personally. My family knew Edgar for many years as they grew up. I know Mr. Underwood knew Edgar as well, and probably many folks up here. So I would like to acknowledge that and send a message of condolences to his wife and his children and his extended family. So if we can just remember that. In addition to Mr. Wynkoop, before we just take a moment, I would also like to acknowledge that this Thursday will be the 1-year anniversary of the passing of our former chief, Matt Catania. Just wanted to remember that as well. So if we could just take a moment in remembrance of these 2 people, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we will continue on our regular agenda. We do not have a public hearing tonight, so I will ask for approval of the minutes of our previous meeting.
Madam Chair.
Go right ahead.
Motion to approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2022, regular meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Announcements and reports. Do we have any announcements or reports tonight? Rosemary?
Madam Chair, I attended, along with our chief, a sort of an orientation session, I guess I would call it, at the Housing Authority. I'm the liaison for this term, and with the staff there, and it was just very helpful. Real good overview of the Housing Authority and what they do. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Does anybody else have anything to report? I have the Commission on Aging this Thursday, so I will give you an update the next time we're together, although Matt always provides really timely updates from the Senior Center, so mine will be the next time I'm here. All right, if there are no others, we will move on to appointments and resignations. We have an appointment this evening. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Go right ahead.
Okay, motion to ratify the town manager's reappointment of Devin Tyrell to the Conservation Commission for the term ending January 15th, 2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Do we have any other appointments that were not on our agenda or reappointments tonight? Okay, moving along. Board of Education is next meeting. Town Attorney Mastriani, do you have anything for us tonight?
Good evening. I do not for tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, Robert, your turn.
Thank you. I have a relatively short list of things to speak about this evening. The first one is the Historic Preservation Grant. The Connecticut State Library has announced that Plainville will be receiving a grant through the Historic Document Preservation Program in the amount of $5,500. Cindy Perini, our town clerk, plans to utilize the grant to purchase new archival binders for permanent vital records such as birth, death, and marriages for the period 1952 to 1985. The current binders do not meet the standards set by the Public Records Administrator, and there is an item under new business that would authorize the town clerk to file the application for the Historic Preservation Grant. Cindy, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, or?
Currently, the binders that we have, the vitals are prepared or are stored mixed, birth with death, birth with marriage. That's not up to statute, so that's a problem according to the Public Records Administrator. So we need to file those accordingly. And the binders are not of the proper material. The bindings also sort of, they clip and pinch the staff's hands, so they're problematic at times.
Okay.
So we're trying to get that fixed. But other than that, organizing the records a little better.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Next item I have is the American Rescue Plan Act proposed projects. Town staff is recommending that the town council consider utilizing a portion of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, SLFRF is the acronym, associated with the American Rescue Plan for 3 projects. The first would authorize the purchase or ordering of the VACCON vehicle at an estimated cost of $450,000. There's a long lead time involved with that particular vehicle. We'd like to get it ordered so that we have it in somewhat of a timely fashion.
Robert, we're ordering one at this time?
Yes, that's what we're recommending.
Okay.
The second item would be to replace sidewalks in the Maxine Drive, Bernice Court area. These are sidewalks that were rated poor on our sidewalk survey that was done a couple of years ago. Town staff would like to bid this project this spring and to have the project completed this year. The estimated cost of this is also $450,000. The third item would be to provide some additional resources to the Youth Services Department for counseling, for some additional counseling for students, as well as making some improvements to the office area to make it more comfortable when meeting with them as well. The estimated cost for these changes would be in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. If the town council wishes to consider these 3 items, town staff is recommending that a public hearing be scheduled for March 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. before the next town council meeting to give residents the opportunity to comment on the recommended use of the funds. We'd also give a little bit more detail, especially as it relates to the youth services programs that would be expanded, and give some additional information with regards to the specific sidewalks that would be addressed,
Okay.
and whatnot. And there also was an item under new business regarding this recommendation as far as calling the public hearing.
Okay.
Next item I have is the COVID-19 update. The latest State Health Department COVID-19 report indicates that Plainville is no longer in the red category. In fact, over the last 2 weeks, Plainville is at an average daily rate of 8.6 COVID cases per 100K population, which puts us in the yellow category. Not even orange, yellow. So we're 2 steps down. Residents and visitors are no longer required to wear face masks when entering all municipal buildings. And I found out today also that the schools have a mask, and this was something that went into place, pretty well known as far as students and faculty are not, are, I guess, mask optional in terms of wearing masks in school as well as on the buses as well. Mask optional. I'm not sure if does the bus driver still have to wear a mask, or is that optional as well? It's optional. Okay, all right. So that's the update on that. The other item I have is the Police Chief Chris Vangeli welcome reception. Welcome reception for the new police chief has been scheduled, not tonight, but Wednesday, April 6th at the Plainville Library from 6 to 7:30 p.m. This will be an opportunity for residents and business owners to stop in and meet Chris Vangeli, Plainville's newly appointed police chief. There will be light refreshments served as well, and a press release and notifications will be sent out and posted in the coming weeks.
Great.
So, before turning it over to Matt Daskell for happenings, I would like to point out that this is Matt's last meeting because he has accepted a job working for the state of Connecticut in their Office of Policy and Management. Good luck with that, Matt. I will point out that Matt is, while he's only been with us a relatively short time, he is, primarily responsible for putting a lot of the budget book together. He also was the lead person on helping out with our ordinance dealing with blighted properties, and that's not always an easy thing to deal with. He was also a liaison from my office to the Aviation Commission, which is, as Dave Underwood would point out, is a challenging commission, but he served well there. He dealt with a lot of citizens' complaints that came into my office, and very good with the public. He also oversaw a lot of things dealing with the Public Works Department. All-around person, whatever he did, whatever was asked of him, and did it with a smile on his face and enthusiasm, and you're going to be missed, Matt, and just wanted to point that out before turning it over to you for your last happenings.
Good luck. Good luck, yeah. Congratulations and good luck.
Well, thank you. I'll try and live up to it with the exciting happenings that we have. It's been a pleasure serving here. So I have a few events for this evening's happenings, and thank you again, everyone. The Plainville Anti-Racism Task Force will be sponsoring a program in its speaker series, Plainville Unites. This is on Wednesday, March 23rd at 6:30 p.m. in the Plainville Public Library. The featured speaker in this event will be, and I apologize, I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, Sumia Doud. Sumia is of Pakistani descent and will be speaking about her culture as well as experience growing up and attending schools in Plainville. To register or for more information, you can contact Roberta Brown at 860-793-0221, extension 7404. There's a mouthful, 7404, pardon me. And information is on the town website as well. The tax office is reminding folks that the tax sale has been scheduled for April 5th, 2022, and this is for delinquent properties with excessive delinquencies that the council previously identified. The Senior Center has a number of exciting happenings. They're announcing that all drop-in activities have returned to the Senior Center. They've got an extensive list that we've talked about. I'll name a few that we haven't in past weeks. Open quilting, Wednesdays, 9:30 to 11:30. I still haven't refined it, so that might be on the list of things I would be interested in. Open painting is Wednesdays at 1, and telephone bingo is available on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Call ahead to receive the Zoom information or a bingo card. They also have a number of other events. I'll highlight one. Memory Cafe returns Thursday, March 17th at 2:30 p.m. The full list of events will be available on the town website. And finally, as a transition, the Plainville Community Schools is asking stakeholders to take part in their strategic planning process. Every 3 to 5 years, Plainville Community School leadership team seeks to engage the community in their district strategic planning process. Simply, they ask, how can we transform the Plainville Community Schools into the model district within Connecticut? Further information is on the town website as well as the school's website for the stakeholder survey there. And that's all that I have this evening.
Okay. Thank you both. Does anybody have any questions for either Robert or Matt with their report? I just want to say thank you, Matt, for your service to the town of Plainville. I really appreciate all the help you've ever given me, most especially, and I've said this before, but I would be remiss if I don't repeat it, with your extraordinary skills at pumpkin carving and gutting. Matt he was just remarkable this year with a power tool that cut the tops off, cut the faces, and I will miss you.
It was my
That's
pleasure.
usually a manual process that takes far longer than Matt and his partner had going there. So, of course, I wish you the very best. And I know you will shine at the state of Connecticut. And please don't forget us. Come back whenever you have any free time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. No questions for Robert with his report. We'll move along to our public comment section. At this point in the meeting, I welcome anybody from the public who would like to come to the podium and speak to the council. You will have 3 minutes to speak to us. So does anybody wish to speak to the council at this time? The faces I see are probably not going to do that, but I am going to ask, does anybody wish to speak to the council? Okay, last chance. Anybody wish to speak to the council? All right, we'll close that and move along. We do not have any old business to conduct, so we are into the new business portion of our meeting. And may I have a motion for item number 1, please?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
motion to adopt the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing Application for Historic Preservation Grant.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 2,
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
motion to establish a public hearing on Monday, March 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Center to hear public comment on the use of coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, SLFRF, associated with the American Rescue Plan Act for the following proposed project: purchase of a VACCON vehicle, sidewalk installation, youth service counseling program improvements.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, please.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
motion to establish a public hearing on Monday, April 4th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Center to hear public comment on the Town Council's proposed fiscal year 2023 budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 4,
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
motion to set the location of the annual town meeting for the purpose of voting on the Town Council's proposed fiscal year 2023 budget at the Plainville Firehouse, Tuesday, April 26, 2022, for the hours of 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5,
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
motion to approve the tax refunds as listed on the addendum.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are in our next portion of our meeting, under other discussions of interest is the town manager's proposed FY 2023 budget. This will be presented by the town manager Lee, and Superintendent of Schools Page. Okay, you're gonna do from there?
No, we're going to take a quick
Okay.
break and we'll set up. How's that?
All right, so that's our next section in our agenda. Okay, so we'll resume our meeting, and up next is Town Manager Robert Lee to present his portion of the proposed budget for FY 2023.
Very happy to stand before you this evening to present the town manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 23, along with Superintendent of Schools Steve LePage, who I consider a teammate of mine as we do this presentation. This would be the 18th budget proposal that I've stood before the town council to present. Hopefully, it's my last budget proposal before the town council.
Thank you.
A couple of items I want to speak to, some of the challenges that we face as far as fiscal year 23, and those are the 4 items that are up on the screen right now. First is revaluation. The proposed mill rate will impact property owners differently depending upon the change in value to their property compared to all other property owners in Plainville, and that had to do with the October 1st, 21 grand list. Over the last 5 years, residential property has increased 17%, condominiums 13%, multifamily homes 19%, industrial property 20%. And they've increased in value relative to commercial properties, which have increased only 3% according to our revaluation. In general, this means that residential and industrial properties will see a higher tax impact because of revaluation, while commercial properties will see a reduction in their current taxes, generally. This is pretty much the opposite of what occurred during the last revaluation. Second item is the proposed changes to the motor vehicle tax structure. The governor has proposed 2 major changes to how motor vehicles will be taxed. First, he has proposed to cap the mill rate that towns can utilize to impose on motor vehicles at 29 mills. If adopted by the state legislature, it would result in 2 different mill rates in Plainville. one for real estate and personal property, and another for motor vehicles. Complicating matters further is that there is a second bill filed that would cap the motor vehicle taxes at 30 mils. And we've heard rumor that there's other legislators talking about maybe 31 or 32. So for a budget presentation this evening, we're using the governor's proposal of capping at 29 mils. Second, the governor has proposed a new way to value motor vehicles. Rather than use a retail value, he has proposed using a manufacturer's suggested retail price, or MSRP, to determine the value of motor vehicles along with a 20-year depreciation schedule. He has also proposed eliminating motor vehicle taxes for snowmobiles, all-terrain vehicles, and residential trailers. All these changes will have an impact on local taxes. It is unclear what those impacts may be, and we'll give it our best guess as far as this evening's presentation. With regards to inflation, in 2021, the inflation rate was 7%. This was the highest inflation rate in 39 years. This has impacted the proposed fiscal year 23 budget in several areas, including wages, medical costs, and fuel prices, to name a few. And finally, the state budget approval. The legislative session is scheduled to end on May 5th after Plainville has voted on the town budget. This has been a yearly problem for municipalities as changes to state funding and other financial impacts occur after our budget process has been completed in many instances. And there is very little reason to believe that this will not be an issue this year as well. Although they say every year they're going to do it, I'm not sure that I have a lot of confidence in that statement. So those are four items, in my opinion, that complicate this budget, but we'll try to explain some of that and how it filters into this presentation this evening. The total proposed budget that you have before you is $65,758,562. And it represents an increase of $2.3 million or 3.63%. Just remind you that our current mill rate is 34.56 mils. As recommended, this proposed budget would decrease the tax rate for real estate and personal property by 3.41 mils, or minus 9.9%, and the tax rate for motor vehicles by 5.56 mils, or minus 16.1%. So for real estate and personal property, the mill rate would be 31.15 as proposed, and the motor vehicle would be capped at 29 mils. And to give you a little historical figures with regards to approved budgets as far as mill rate changes are concerned, and this is the last 5 years. Our 5-year average on mill rate changes is been about $500,000 a year, or about 1.6% a year. I would point out that fiscal year 18, there was a supplemental tax that was put in there. I did not include that because that wasn't really part of our budget process, but we did, there was a supplemental mill rate that was put in place because of some of the reductions that the state made to us well after the budget process had been completed in Plainville. Our proposed expenditure changes, we have 4 major categories, and only 2 of them are being proposed to be increased, and that is the Board of Education operating budget, about $1.5 million, or 3.72%, and town government at $820,000, or 4.27%. That makes up all of the $2.3 million that's being proposed as far as the expenditure increase. Our next item is our typical pie chart, which shows those 4 major categories and how much each of those 4 sections make up as far as our budget is concerned. The Board of Education budget, about 63%, town government, 30.5%, debt service at 6.75%, and capital projects, very small amount at this point in time as far as the contribution from the general fund. It's a relatively large budget, but most of the funding for capital comes out of other sources, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes as well. Our expenditure increases Over the last 11 years, you see before you in these bar chart, and over the last 11 years, the expenditure increases have averaged 1.66%. The proposal, of course, this year is 3.63%. But I compared that, and I've done this last couple of years as well, to the rate of inflation as opposed to the expenditure increases. The inflation rate is in the middle column, and the expenditure increases that you show on the previous page is in the far right-hand column. And what this shows is that the inflation rate over the previous 5 years was about 1.82%, and our expenditure increases pretty much mirrored the inflation rate of 2.03%. I would point out that the inflation rate again for fiscal year 21 was 7%, which impacts us going forward, and that which has been the largest 12-month gain since in 39 years, as previously stated. And so this budget is about half the inflation rate that's in place today. And it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon if you've been to a gas station lately. And I know that one of our council members has been to a gas station lately and is recommending go to BJ's if you have a card. So just remember that.
I wonder who that was.
I'll go with some. Should I turn it over to you? No, let me do some revenue. Yeah, I have some estimated direct revenue changes that you'll see in the budget, and this was I did a little because of revaluation and the confusion that goes along with revaluation. I wanted to present a scenario, a what if there was not revaluation, and what would that have looked like in terms of our revenues, and how does that compare against our expenses? So in this particular instance, we have had a 3-year average grand list increase of about 1%. So I said, well, probably would have seen that trend continue this year. If that trend continued, I wouldn't expect that it wouldn't be any worse. Probably would be a little bit better. And in fact, it was, because we've had Americold come partially online. So I added 40% of what their taxes would generate as far as this budget is concerned, which means that our grand list increase, if we had not had revaluation, would have been in the $935,000 range. So the other items are what's in our budget. Especially the intergovernmental line item, which is a little bit over $1 million, and that's the increase from the previous year. A good portion of that is what the state proposes to reimburse the towns for the fact that we're capping the mill rate at 29 mills. They've calculated that if we had taxed them at our 34.56, that would have generated $940,000 worth of revenue, and they want to reimburse us for that difference. I'm not sure where they got the 940. I'm not sure that I've seen the calculation and could figure out what it is, but that's where it stands right now. The other difference between what you have there, a good portion of it is we do have an increase in our ECS formula that comes to us, so that generates that revenue. So based on that, if we had not had a revaluation this year, we probably would have been presenting a revenue increase of about $2.13 million. We'll go to the next item, and this is a what if again. We have proposed expenditure changes of $2.3 million. We have estimated revenue changes if we did not have revaluation of $2.13 million. So that's a difference of $171,000. So if not for revaluation, we'd be presenting this evening a mill rate of 0.12 mils, or a tax increase of 0.3%. And I guess the point I'm trying to make with regards to this exercise is that if not for revaluation, we would have had a very small tax increase relative to our increased revenues against the proposed expenditures, and would have been pretty much in line with what's happened with our budget for the last 2 years, which was a no tax increase and a slight tax decrease. Any changes to residential or taxpayers, changes, increases or decreases is really, in my opinion, going to be on the basis of revaluation. And I'll show you some additional slides later that gives you some idea of what that means. As far as the town general government is concerned, summary of expenditure changes by function. See general government, public safety, public works, health and human services, civic and cultural, employee fringe benefits and sundry, which is our transfers out. You could see, where some of the major increases are, especially in the area of employee fringe benefits and in public safety department as well. Our major drivers, when you dig a little bit deeper into the budget, is payroll. Payroll increases, changes make up about $327,000. That does include the changes that we've had in staff over the last year or so. Employee benefits are generating another $305,000, and that's based on our participation in the state partnership plan. Board of Education is seeing similar increases as well to their budget. We have increases in risk insurance, transfers out to the library. Town council is aware that we've been holding the amount that we fund the library very, very steady for the last probably 8 or 9 years, if not longer. We've been using to balance that the library's unassigned fund balance, and we've been drawing that down over time, and we've drawn it down to a point where we really can't use it next year, and we talked about that during our last budget process, so we're proposing to increase, probably for the first time in a long time, support to the library of $45,000. We have gas, diesel, heating fuel changes we've locked in to into some of these items before the big increases, but still we still have an increase of about $33,000. We're glad that we did that then and not now. Maintenance contracts increase at $46,000, and all other line items in the budget, plus or minus, makes up $10,000. So you can see where most of the increases are in our budget, and I'm sure it's not much different at the Board of Ed site as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn the microphone over to my partner, and I won't say crying. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. As always, it has been very good to work with Mr. Lee and the entire team. Matt, you will be missed. You've been a steady, intelligent, hardworking individual who I've respected, so thank you. I want to thank Sam Alderstein, Dave Lewandowski, our board members who are here and those who are at home who were part of many budget meetings leading up to tonight where our budget was approved 9 votes to 0 at the last Valentine's Day Board of Education meeting, so thank you for that. Chief, I actually came tonight because I thought it was your welcoming party, so I didn't realize I had to speak tonight, but welcome to Chief Angeli as well. We've had a chance to meet, and I know he's going to do a great job, and I look forward to working with him. We've already started. So with that, without further ado, I think I've thanked everyone in the room except for my 2 former students, Mr. Catanzaro, Mr. Rocco. It's nice to see 2 former students of mine from Plainville High School making Plainville proud. So everything in our budget is driven by our vision, which was that first 3-ring document that you're very familiar with. In our vision statement, to inspire and prepare lifelong learners to follow their passion, engage in their communities, and positively impact our global society. We focus on inspiring, preparing, engaging our students, teachers, and through robust learning opportunities. My commitments that I've shared at each of the budget preparation meetings, I'll just read them quickly. We will remain conscientious. This was my commitment to the board and to you as well. We'll remain conscientious and goal-focused in our approach to budgeting. We'll request only what we believe essential to educate and support our students through these times of challenge and change and through all times. We will model our portrait of the Plainville graduate by collaborating, communicating, innovating, remaining mindful and resilient in our budgeting processes and practices in all things, and we'll do our very best to provide for the needs of our children, families, and our dedicated PCS staff family. This is an overview. I know there's a lot on that page, and you probably can't see it from there. This will really kind of explain the entire budget, and then we'll go through the rest of the slides fairly quickly. As I had said, the Board of Ed did pass the budget after 4 meetings that led up to that decision with a 9-0 vote on the February 14th board meeting. The budget represents a 3.72% increase, which is 0.07% lower than our contractual obligations and increases, not including the health insurance, which I'll speak about in a minute. This is a lower increase than that proposed by other area superintendents. You'll see a slide with some of the area budgets. Health insurance alone represents 1.17% of the entire increase. Health insurance would have been far worse had we not switched to the state partnership plan, so that was a very good decision when that happened a few years ago. There are several COVID grants built in as offsets in this budget that have reduced it to where it is. Had they not been in place for a significant number of incremental staffing, software and equipment and supplies, all from the grants, the budget would be much higher. And those are all essential to our operations as we rebuild back to normal and better than ever over the next few years. Our Board of Ed budget does not include an increase for inflation. It includes only a portion of projected utility increases. Therefore, we assume some risk in this budget of a fiscal cliff that we've talked about and heard about so often. If you overfund a budget with temporary dollars to permanent items in a budget, you have to be very careful, because I don't want to have to come here and ask for an 8% increase in a few years. So being very cautious of that and how we spend our grants and doing it in a balanced way. Our per-pupil expenditures is lower than 60% of other Connecticut towns, districts. It increased for this year based on the formula because of our student decrease. We had a number of students not attending school during last year for a number of different reasons related to COVID. Since that time, we've bounced back up to our normal historic levels and even above that. Schools operating close to usual this year. In the last 2 years, the Board of Education gave back close to $1.8 million of unused budget funds that went back to the town. So this year, we do not anticipate any little or any savings. We have some lines that are running over without placements and some other items. So just operating close to a normal year. The 11-year Board of Ed budget average has been 1.82%, which is below the rate of inflation. And the budget preparation was coordinated with Robert Lee and Rob Uden as a component of the fiscally responsible general fund budget proposal. So that's kind of the summary page, if you will. The next slides give a little more detail, but I'm only going to go over some quick talking points at the bottom. This is all yours to review as you'd like, and I know we have our workshop next week and public comment on Wednesday. Additional staffing hired in the 21-22 and this year are assumed to be funded by the COVID recovery grants, so I need new staff. Staffing and benefits are 85% of the Board of Ed budget, which is pretty common for most boards of education. It utilizes COVID relief funding in order to sustain our schools at a good value to taxpayers, and we also remain mindful of anything recurring for 24-25 when the ESSER funds must be expended by September 30th of 2024. That's the fiscal cliff I had mentioned. The next slide is an overview of the totals. So the adopted budget for this current year, was $39,826,972. This year's Board of Education budget this year's Board of Education budget, $40,843,643 before the health insurance increase. That's a dollar increase of $1,016,671, or 2.55%. That is 0.07% lower than our contractual requirements for all the salaries and other contracts and energy and things of that nature. The health insurance increase we were told to budget for, the same as the town, is 8%, which is $465,154. That brings our increase up by 1.17% up to 3.72% for a total Board of Ed budget of $41,308,797. This next slide shows you the challenges with and related to what Mr. Lee mentioned with the ECS funds. Had some impact on that. Also our per pupil expenditure, because of you can see the middle red bar, 112 students had disenrolled for a number of different reasons. Some for COVID related, some had to move, some for homeschooling due to their own personal family, what they were comfortable with. We also had 476 students who were learning remotely last year at at the highest level. So all of those students and more have returned. So you can see that we're back operating on a fully normal, typical school year with a lot of challenges, but our students are back, over 2,300 of them. This next slide comes from an infographic that's on our website, but it shows just a snapshot of some of the things we're proud of in our school community: rigorous and relevant curriculum programming, universal pre-K through adult education, small class sizes, relatively speaking, and it varies by level, but state-of-the-art STEAM and STEM labs, 21st century learning opportunities, award-winning arts and music programs, college credit earning opportunities that continue to expand and grow, college readiness and pathway experiences, fieldwork experience, robust technology. So these are some of the things that make us an exceptional school district and striving to get better each year. Related to transformation and continuous improvement, through our strategic planning process that has, we've kicked that process off through a webinar, and now we're in the process of, thank you, Mr. Daskell, for announcing the surveys that have gone out and they're posted on the websites. We do ask that everyone in the community who's interested in having a voice and participating potentially in some of our subcommittees share some things that they'd like to see improve in Plainville, some things they're proud of as well, but some things they'd like to see improve. So I won't read this to you, but this is really about the process of ensuring that our school community focuses on wellness, readiness for life, and all the opportunities that our students want, and also making sure that there are opportunities for all students to take advantage of. The next slide gives you what I had mentioned earlier, and I know it's small up there, but it shows you some of the Hartford Area Superintendent Association budgets that were proposed by superintendents, adopted. And this is just a representative group. As you can see, 3.72 is lower than many of the districts on here. Some of the lower districts, as noted at the bottom, that are very low or zero or smaller numbers are alliance districts, and they receive substantial state funding to support their requirements and oversight to improve, because they've been designated as at risk for a number of factors. Next, our per-pupil expenditure. We rank 100th out of 166 from highest to lowest, so lower than 99 other Connecticut districts, or about 60% of districts. And that number is expected to be even lower in the ranking. This was a dip because of the lower student count, which is part of that formula. So I think we were 111th or 112th, 111th last year, and I expect we'll go back there in the next calculation. And the next slide is just showing you what I had mentioned with the contractual increases and obligations for the Board of Education, with the different line items that go into these contracts. With teachers' contract, this is the highest of the 3-year contract. All the lines there, I won't read through all of them, but it amounts to a 2.62% increase just to make those obligations within our budget. And as I had shown you before, we came in at 2.55%. Less, without the insurance being considered. And almost there to wrap it up. We have just some effectiveness and efficiencies. Our student, as I said, 100th out of all the districts. This is the 11th. The 11-year average is 1.82%. Our average class size is 20 or around 20 or fewer students, with some exceptions that are higher. And we do our very best to maintain outstanding schools through our budgeting process, with everything being aligned to our district vision and goals for the district. So just a quick explanation of COVID recovery grant funding, with consideration of supplanting local funding and lowering mill rate through that process. And a lot of questions were asked and addressed during the Board of Education budget workshop. So just really quickly, this budget proposal would have been significantly higher if it weren't for use of the COVID recovery grant funds. We're taking a risk in many of our line items, because once COVID recovery funding's gone, we'll need to find a way to either sustain programs or reduce programs in order to come in where we need to come in at with a reasonable budget in the future. This risk has been called fiscal cliff. In our experience, once something's removed from the Board of Ed operating budget, it's a big challenge to get it back in. And we look forward to continue planning with our town leaders to prepare for the vote on April 26th. We did send out a form, and you can click on this second link. This is available on our website, but this will show you some of the questions and answers that were posed. We did put it out to the entire school community. We only had 2 responses. One was about pre-K and one was about whether masks were going away. So there weren't any questions relative to the budget, really, and those were both addressed. The last page here is just our budget book. You have access to all of these. These are links to, again, it's on our website as well, but links to our entire budget book, both sections, and the object summaries, and the object pages, I should say. And then if there's any questions before I relinquish the microphone and give it back to Mr. Lee.
Any questions at this point?
I know we have more sessions for that, so thank you very much. Yes, I expect it. That's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Very concise. Yeah, no, I really do mean it tonight. Next item I have is debt service. Right now, our total debt that's owed by the town as of the end of this year is a little bit under $17 million. Town government is responsible for about 7 of it. A good portion of that has to do with some road bond projects, and the Board of Education a little bit under $10 million. As far as our debt payments are concerned, to pay off that debt, we have budgeted $4.43 million. I think that's an amount that we've kept at that level for many years as well. And of that, about $1.234 million goes towards town government, and it also includes some interest payments should we do our final bonding, $9 million bonding at the end of the summer, which is planned to happen. Board of Education portion of that payment is $1,646,000, and the difference that's available for our health insurance deficit and also for contributions to our capital improvement plan is about $1.55 million, at least as far as fiscal year 23 is concerned. The capital improvement plan, as proposed, would be $2,262,350. Of that, $2.26 million, the general fund, which would come directly from the taxpayers, would fund $7,850. Other sources of revenue that is being proposed to support the capital improvement plan is $680,000 from the unassigned fund balance, $600,000 from the debt management fund. We just talked a little bit about that. LoSUP funding, $560,000, and Town Aid Road grant funding that we have saved up as well of $415,000. Some of the major projects being recommended: Honor Heights Sewer Project, $560,000. Although the town council has not approved this yet, we have not gone to public hearing. In order for us to access the LoSEP grants that are given by the state, the project has to be in the 5-year capital improvement plan. So it doesn't mean that we're going forward with the project, but we want to put it in the 5-year plan so that when we seek approval from the state to get reimbursement for it, we can show them that we put it in the budget. So I don't want to be misleading to say that a decision has been made to move forward, but we want to have it in the plan. So if you do move forward, we can access the $560,000 LoSEP grants. Otherwise, we'd have to wait another year, and there'd be some uncertainty with regards to. We want to make sure that we have to file an application with the state of Connecticut, and they have to approve it. So we want to be able to do that by putting it in the capital improvement plan for next year. We have the Tomlinson Avenue Bridge, which we're in the process of doing right now. $380,000 what we anticipate is the rest of our share that hasn't been appropriated yet. And again, both of those items will be funded and tied to the LoSEP funding that you saw on the previous page, as well as the Town Aid Road funding that you saw on the previous page as well. That's how those two items are tied to that. We have the Board of Education student Chromebook replacement at $180,000. We have the police radio system that we pay for over time. It's actually a long-term lease of $174,000. Also proposing to buy 3 police cruisers at $103,000, and you could see some other slightly lower items as well. There are 32 projects overall that are being recommended for consideration. 26 of which are from the town, and 6 from the Board of Education. Now, to try to put this all in perspective as far as what homeowners may be to expect, as we spoke earlier in the presentation, single-family home residential properties, as a result of revaluation, went up an average of 17%. We have used in the past that the average home in Plainville, and who's average, but at least for this presentation, we've used in the past, and we continue to use an average in fiscal year 22, which was based on the 10-1 grand list, was about $200,000. So based upon the fiscal year 23 or the 10-1 grand list, that 17% increase would result in the average home being about $234,000. According to state statute, we tax based upon 70% of the value. So that means that we're taxing this year based on $163,800 on the average home. Based upon the mill rates that were being proposed, the 31.15 mills, that would result in fiscal year taxes for next year on a typical home at $234,000 value of about $5,100. That would be an increase of $264 over the current taxes that they would have paid in the current fiscal year, or 5.5% increase. I would like to point out, and that's in the paragraph below, that it is going to be reduced in theory by changes made to the motor vehicle tax proposed by Governor Ned Lamont. Cars, this can range from, if you bought a new car this year, the difference could be $162 less than what you would have paid, under the mill rate if it was at the level that we're going to be at in the current year, or $56 less than what they would have paid, based upon the current year as well if it was a new sedan. If it was a 4-year-old car, we've calculated that the savings for both a sedan and an SUV would be about $30. So I guess the point here would be that if you had a home and you had 2 cars, one was a new car and a new SUV. There's a lot of SUVs out there, and you had a 4-year-old sedan. You might save about close to almost $200 off of that 262 average, and it really would differ depending upon what people had as far as cars and where they stood in terms of how their home value matches up to the average that we presented here this evening. Then we did a little calculation with regards to condominiums. Condominiums average home value last year was $136,000. With a 13% increase based on revaluation, that would go up to $154,000. 70% of that is at $108,000. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but I'm trying to get to the bottom line. The bottom line is that at 31.15 mills as proposed, that would be an increase in taxes of about $61, or 1.18% for the average condominium owner. And again, that could be offset as well with the motor vehicle taxes. It's possible that if a condominium owner had the average but bought a new car recently, in theory they could have less taxes paid next year than they did this year, based on the proposed budget that's before you. And with revaluation, there's going to be a shift from commercial to residential. And as a result, I wanted to give you some ideas. These are some, and these are just selected somewhat randomly. But for example, the Connecticut Commons, which is our #1 taxpayer in town, would see a reduction of about $257,000 based upon revaluation. So when you see increases on the other side, that's where the shift is occurring. About $40,000 would be the Fairfield Inn. Connecticut Commons has a separate parcel which holds Kohl's. The Kohl's shop, that would be reduced by about $29,000, their tax bill. And then just, we have industrial property on Mott Corporation, they have 2 buildings on Spring Lane. They would see a reduction of about $4,000. The Big Y Plaza would see a decrease of about $4,000. And the J. Timothy's Tavern would see a reduction of about $3,600. There's many others as well, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of if a homeowner's taxes are increasing, where are the decreases occurring? And it could be in some of the homeowners who maybe only see a 10% increase. What I've calculated is that if you're a single-family homeowner and your assessment increased by more than 11%, that's pretty much where the break-even point is. If you had an 11% increase to your single-family home, you probably break even in terms of the taxes you paid in the current fiscal year. Anything above that, depending upon how much of it is, and I gave you an example of 17%, which again would be offset somewhat by, depending upon what type of motor vehicles you owned, that's where the range can occur. So I do as well want to thank my staff, primarily Rob Buden, the finance director, for putting this all together, and Matt Daskell. They put in a lot of time and effort, especially over the last couple of weeks and over the weekend, and I appreciate their help for getting this all together. The primary movers, as far as town staff is concerned, we do have a public hearing scheduled for Wednesday at 7 p.m. here in the Town Council chambers. We'll give a stripped-down version of this presentation this evening so that we can hear directly from residents and taxpayers more quickly. And our work sessions begin next week, beginning on Monday, and Tuesday would be going over general government. Board of Education is on Wednesday, and then we have some scheduled workshops for the following week as well if needed, and I'm sure we'll need a couple more days to finish up this. We'll have copies of this, the proposed budget. The binder will be in the library tomorrow morning. We will have it online as well tomorrow. And it'll stay online as we go forward. And our workshops will also be televised on Nutmeg TV, so people will, if they cannot make it and want to see how we make how we make the budget, then you can watch it on TV as well. So if there's any questions or comments at this point in time.
Any questions for the town manager or the superintendent of schools right now? All new to us, but, we'll certainly take our time. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for doing a very clear and straightforward presentation tonight. We do appreciate that. And again, the work will begin next week. So thank you very much for all of your energy and effort you put into this. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. And we have one more item under matter appropriate for executive session. So may I have a motion to enter into executive session, please?
Madam Chair, motion to enter in executive session, litigation matter.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Thank you again very much for coming this evening.